Шановні пані та панове,
Ladies and gentlemen, Their Excellencies, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. The statement by the President of Ukraine. Thank you. Dear journalists, dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm very happy to welcome the Prime Minister of Canada, a good friend to our country, and whole Canadian delegation of true friends to Ukraine. I'm happy to welcome them in our capital city of Ukraine, which is currently facing a full-fledged aggression of Russia. And this is the gesture of support that we highly appreciate. We are grateful to your team and to everyone who is here with us today, who is helping us with words and deeds and their personal presence, who's standing together with us in these difficult times. So thank you for this position. Our nations stand shoulder to shoulder in the fight against Russia's tyranny, and the Prime Minister of Trudeau has managed to visit the suburbs of Kyiv that were liberated from the occupying forces. He had a chance to see with his own eyes the damage and destruction caused by the Russians on our territory. So logically, some of the topics of our negotiations were covering any actions we need to take in order to facilitate the liberation of our territory, to restore the normal life for our people. We've had a detailed conversations with regards to the defensive support provided by Canada to Ukraine, and I'm grateful for this support. And I've also mentioned what other types of weapons we need in order to move closer to our victory. Another important aspect is the economic support for Ukraine. I felt the understanding of the needs of Ukraine, just as 77 years ago, the after-war rebuilding of Ukraine requires a very swift, concise movements similar to the Marshall Plan, and we've agreed on how to turn that into reality. And this is not the end of our meeting for today. I'm planning to raise a number of issues, particularly levying the customs fee and customs duties for Ukrainian products. I believe this is very important for our economy, for assisting our economics. And I would like to reiterate once again, and we'll be raising this issue many times, that is cancelling the visa for Ukrainian citizens. I believe that there's very unique relations in between of our nations, a warm-hearted relations between our people, and I believe this is the high time for discussing this matter. And after bilateral talks, we joined the online meeting of J7 leaders, and I'm grateful to Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor, for the organization of this summit. I believe that today's summit, with the participation of Ukraine, is a true evidence to the fact that the whole world is determined to ensure the victory, just as it was 77 years ago. On behalf of the Ukrainian nation, I'm grateful to the leaders of UK, US, France, Italy, Japan. I'm grateful to the European Union and the Prime Minister, of course, of Canada for this solidarity. And we've agreed a special statement upon the results of this summit, which has fixed the historical importance of our solidarity and the readiness to work together until we would restore the safety and the international rulings of the law. And I've suggested a number of tools that our country is currently in need, and which would be very important for those countries who cherish the democracy and independence as well. First, the new steps in defensive support for Ukraine, because it is on the battlefield that the destiny for Europe is currently resolved, and we still have a war in our territory, and it means that the current sanctions are not enough. We've also discussed the financial support for Ukraine as the war continues. We've also discussed the common work upon the rebuilding of Ukraine after the war. The scale of threat is significant, and that is why we are using the Marshall Plan and the terminology like that. I've suggested the patronage idea for certain cities and regions or different industries who've suffered from the Russian aggression. This format would allow to significantly reinforce the rebuilding, and it will create a new economic ties for the democratic world. Fifth, I've suggested to join our efforts to ensure the food security. We, the exporters of grain, we can do that while paying respect to the values and rights of humans, so there will be no price crises on the food market, so that any country could be safe from any risks and challenges with regards to food security. I'm grateful for this meeting. I'm grateful for this willingness to work together for the sake of democracy. And I'd like to extend words of gratitude to Canada for receiving significant support in demining our territory. Russian occupying forces are leaving behind thousands of mines and tripwires and ammunition. They pose a threat to our people and our children, and today we've agreed to establish cooperation in this area so that Ukraine would be completely free of any exclusion zones that you cannot enter because of the threat of Russian mines. And today, in your presence, I would like to decorate some of the Ukrainian heroes who are already clearing our territory from mines, using particularly the equipment that was produced in Canada. And together with our heroes, I would like to decorate a small EOD expert called Patron, who is helping to demine the explosive ordnance and he's helping to teach the kids with some safety rules, particularly in those areas where there is a mine challenge. And this is the initiation for the ceremony of providing the national decorations of Ukraine, in accordance to the decree of the President of Ukraine, for the courage and dedication in the process of performance the military duty, and as well as for the professionalism. We are currently decorating Ilyev Mikhailo, the Major of Civil Protection Service, with the Order for Courage, 3rd degree. And medal for the dedicated service, a service dog called Patron. Okay, that's a very special decoration for the young dog. Medal for the military service to the people of Ukraine. The senior sergeant of the Ukrainian Armed Forces is decorated with the medal for Josak Alexander Mykolaievich, the Master Sergeant of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Kozak Igor Konstantinovich, Major. Semenyuk Volodymyr Volodymyrovich, Major. Skorobilina Sergei Viktorovich, the Junior Sergeant. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. This is the end of the decoration ceremony. And statement by the Prime Minister of Canada.
Thank you very much. It is so great to be here with you, President Zelenskyy, in your beautiful city, my friend. Volodymyr, your inspiration, and as we recognize the service and the inspiration that so many of the members of the Ukrainian Armed Forces have stood up with, one cannot but recognize your extraordinary leadership that is inspiring Ukrainians, but inspiring people around the world about how one fights for what is right, fights for one's country, fights for one's future. Thank you for all your inspiration, my friend. I'm glad to be here today with our Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly to reaffirm Canada's unwavering support for Ukraine, for its people, for democracy. In Canada today, we also celebrate Mother's Day, so I want to express my admiration and respect for all the mothers of Ukraine, those who have lost their children in terrible conflict, but also those who step up on the front lines with the courage and ferocity that only mothers can give in fighting for a future for their kids. We began our day today with a visit to Irpin, where I witnessed firsthand the brutality of Russia's illegal war, of neighborhoods battered, homes destroyed, but I also witnessed the resilience of Ukrainians as people rebuild, as people stood, even outnumbered, 8-1, to defend not just their homes, but the entire city behind them of Kyiv. It was a true inspiration to see people step up to defend their lives, defend their community, defend a bright future for themselves, for the families in the country they love. It is clear that Vladimir Putin is responsible for heinous war crimes. There must be accountability. Canada will support Ukraine as you seek justice for your people who Russia is killing and brutalizing. Since Russia's full-scale invasion 73 days ago, Canada and Canadians continue to stand by your side. Our countries are deeply connected. Canada has the second largest Ukrainian community in the world outside of Ukraine. We've also welcomed thousands of Ukrainians since the beginning of the war, and we will continue to do so. Over the past years, our military has trained well over 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers. We will continue to do the work of being there for you with whatever we can, with whatever you need. The President and I also just finished excellent meetings today to strengthen our deep relationship in meeting together with my fellow G7 leaders. On this anniversary of Victory Day in Europe, standing strong against Putin's illegal war and in defense of democracy, human rights and international law is as important as it ever has been. We will continue together to impose severe sanctions, eliminate the dependency on Russian energy, and fight disinformation. We're also working together to address the global challenges that Putin has created, especially around food security. Since Putin launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Canada has done everything we can to support and rallied our allies to coordinate the strongest possible response. We imposed crippling sanctions on Russia's economy, including financial systems, the central bank, the oligarchs, and the enablers in Belarus. We've delivered a significant amount and range of different types of military equipment. We've delivered financial support so your government can continue to operate, as well as humanitarian aid in country and across Europe, while also, of course, welcoming refugees to Canada. Well, today, I'm happy to be announcing more important sorts for Ukraine. This morning, Ambassador Larissa Galatza and I raised the Canadian flag at our embassy here in the capital. She and her team will resume operations here in Kyiv. Building on our recent announcement of the provisions of LAVs and heavy artillery, today I'm announcing more military assistance, drone cameras, satellite imagery, small arms, ammunition, and other supports, including funding for demining operations. Even if the dog barked at me, we're helping fund that. We're providing $25 million to the World Food Programme for food security in Ukraine. We'll be removing trade tariffs on all Ukrainian imports coming to Canada for the next year. And we're bringing forward new sanctions on 40 Russian individuals and 5 entities, oligarchs, close associates of the regime, the defense sector, all of them complicit in Putin's war. We're also announcing new funding to help support and protect women's organizations, human rights defenders, civil society, and more. Ce matin, l'ambassadrice Larissa Galatza et moi avons hissé le drapeau canadien à notre ambassade ici dans la capitale, et elle et son équipe résumeront leurs opérations à Kyiv. En plus des véhicules blindés légers et de l'artillerie lourde que nous avons récemment annoncés, nous allons fournir encore plus d'équipements militaires, incluant des caméras spécialisées, de l'imagerie satellite, des armes légères et des munitions et d'autres soutiens, incluant aux opérations de déminage. On annonce 25 millions de dollars pour le programme alimentaire mondial pour aider la sécurité alimentaire en Ukraine. Nous enlevons tous les tarifs douaniers sur les importations ukrainiennes qui arrivent au Canada, des nouvelles sanctions sur 40 individus russes et 5 entités, des oligarques, des associés du régime et du secteur de la défense, tous complices dans la guerre de Poutine, et du soutien financier pour aider et protéger les organisations féminines, les défendeurs de droits humains, la société civile, entre autres. Today, we send a resounding message to the world that Canada and our allies continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Vladimir Poutine a fait une grave erreur de calcul. Il a sous-estimé la résilience incroyable du peuple ukrainien. Votre courage, Monsieur le Président, et le courage de votre peuple est une source d'inspiration pour toute la planète. We will continue to support you as you fight authoritarianism, as you defend your freedoms, your democracy, your way of life, as well as all of ours. We stand here in this beautiful capital city, rich in history, culture, and life, a city that stands proud and that will stand for years, decades, and centuries to come as a continued symbol against tyranny. Putin and his accomplices will fail. Ukraine will prevail. Slava Ukraini! Героям слава! Героям слава!
Дуже дякую, шановні колеги журналісти. Є можливість для кількох запитань. Будь ласка, Global News Canada.
Global News. Global News Canada, please raise your hand once again in order to be able to ask your question.
Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm going to ask you your question first, and I have been encouraged to remind you to please also answer in French. You reopened Canada's embassy today. Why did that take so long? And when you were out in Irpin, specifically, what did you see that you haven't seen over the last 70-odd days that stuck with you? And Mr.
First of all, it was an incredible honor today to be at the Canadian Embassy in Kyiv, raising the flag once again. It had been since mid-February that flag had been brought down, that the embassy had been closed. So to be there with our ambassador, not just to raise the flag, but to reopen the embassy, she'll be there working every day from now on, is an important symbol, not just of Canada's steadfast friendship with Ukraine, but of the incredible resilience and heroism of the Ukrainian people who ensured that this city did not fall and that we can resume the work together we have on building a better future for all. The fact that the Canadian flag once again will be flying over the streets of Kyiv is a very good thing indeed. When I was in Irpin this morning, I saw just how much Ukrainians can do standing against a force 8 times as large as they were in defending their homes, defending their land, of pushing back against the Russian illegal invasion. It is an inspiration, but I also saw the work that we're going to have to do all together to rebuild those communities, to rebuild an even stronger future for Ukraine, and that's exactly what we would be there for. Ce matin, j'ai été très touché de pouvoir hisser le drapeau canadien devant l'ambassade canadienne ici à Kyiv. Ça va permettre à notre ambassadrice de revenir au travail, d'être présent ici à Kiev, mais c'est une reconnaissance aussi de la bravoure et des capacités du peuple ukrainien qui a su défendre cette ville et qui continue de se battre pour leur pays, leur culture, leur avenir. C'est très beau de voir le drapeau canadien, encore une fois, être là dans les rues de Kiev. Par rapport à Irpin ce matin, ça a été une occasion d'être rappelé concrètement ce que le peuple ukrainien peut accomplir avec leur courage, avec leur valeur, de s'affronter et de retourner une force où ils étaient 8 Russes pour chaque Ukrainien, démontre ce qu'ils peuvent faire et pourquoi nous devons continuer d'être là pour leur donner les outils pour le faire, mais ça a aussi été un rappel de voir ce quartier résidentiel bien qu'il va falloir rebâtir, que nous allons être là pour aider à rebâtir en Irpin et partout en Ukraine.
Mr. President, if you could please, you talked about never again, and we heard Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announce more supports, but had Canada answered your call for support earlier on, how many Ukrainian lives could have been saved?
Thank you. Indeed, most of the time we've dedicated to negotiating the situation in Ukraine as well as the temporary occupation of our territory by Russia, what needs to be done in order to deoccupy our territory and to save our people. People are very important as
that to have brave and alive Ukraine. І в цьому сенсі хочу вам сказати, що дійсно.
And in this respect, I'd like to say that we are lacking heavy weapons. We've mentioned this, and I'm not going to go too much into details now. And I'm sure you're the journalists. You know how to use internet, and you know how to analyze the information. We all know which countries have the technical capabilities and have the weapons that fortunately is not used on the territory of those countries. Which countries can provide us with those weapons? We all know this. We are not talking not only about those countries who can provide us, but we're talking about those countries who can influence other countries that may be taking similar decisions. And I've talked to Justin as the leader of that country because Canada is assisting us. Canada will be mounting their support. And I'd like to say frankly that weapons can be different because of the war, because of the economic drawdown. We have another need, that is the financial support. Financial support is also a sort of the money, and Canada has made a decision on allocating 1.5 billion of Canadian dollars. We've already received 0.5 billion Canadian dollars, and Canada is second after the United States in terms of the scope of assistance it's been providing to Ukraine. Speaking on weapons, I'm sure that the leader of Canada would be able to support us. Speaking on the sanctions policy, just recently we had 3 wonderful countries, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. These are small countries that I consider the great ones in terms of the partnership, in terms of the friendly relations. And I told them in this meeting that I don't know what to ask you for, because you've already given everything you had. These are the three countries that we can't question, or we cannot ask from them anymore. So today we are hosting the leader of the fourth country that we also cannot ask for more. Now, Sky News.
Thank you. Deborah Haynes from Sky News. Mr. President, a Ukrainian defender at the Azovstal steelworks today accused your government of failing to defend Mariupol at the outset of Russia's invasion back in February, leading to thousands of civilians being killed by Russian forces. He also said that he and his fellow fighters need help, they're not going to surrender, but that they see themselves as dead men. How do you respond to that criticism, and can you guarantee that you won't let these fighters die? And Prime Minister Trudeau, President Vladimir Putin has made no secret, he's spoken openly about his nuclear weapons and his ability to use them. Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion on Ukraine in February, have NATO allies discussed how they would respond if Russia were to launch a nuclear strike in Ukraine? And while I don't expect you to tell us how that response would be, can you say whether options are being or have been drawn up in terms of what that response might look like? Thank you.
Дякую за ваше запитання.
Well, thank you for your question. Speaking on the situation in Azov Steel factory and the situation not only in Mariupol but in Volnovakha, there's no more people left in that city. Russia has ruined to rubbles all of the buildings in Volnovakha. You know that Mariupol is being blocked and people there are suffering on a daily basis. Men and women are defending the city of Mariupol. Those who are still alive and those who are not, they've defended heroically. Deblocking the city of Mariupol in military ways, which is impossible at this moment today, and this is something that we've mentioned openly. Ukraine doesn't have the heavy weaponry to deblock militarily the city of Mariupol. This is not just thoughts. This is the summary, this is the results of the analysis we got from our military leadership. That is why today there's two possible ways. The diplomatic way and diplomatic path, this is what the military and political leadership are currently working on. Now, the diplomatic path has resulted in an evacuation of the civilian people, and all of these civilians were evacuated from the blocked factory of Azovstal. Now, speaking on the military personnel, the Russian army, the leadership of Russian army, as well as the political leadership of Russian Federation, they're not willing to let our military go and let our military be evacuated. We've invited negotiators from a range of countries, from Turkey, Israel, Switzerland. We've tried to solve this issue with the assistance of France and the United Nations organization and the representatives of the ICRC. Russia is willing to exchange military only by exchanging POWs into POWs. That's the situation, that's the response that we have received from the Russian Federation. There is no other responses there. And that is why I clearly understand that it's difficult for everyone in different cities which are blocked in the territory of Ukraine. We're not living by promises, we're living by realities. Our military leadership and the Commander-in-Chief, Zaluzhny, Shapala, and others, and our military commanders, they are the commanders. They have already demonstrated their work. Our soldiers have already demonstrated the way we repel Russian attacks in many regions. And I'd like to remind that tens of thousands of civilians were killed in Mariupol. The bodies of those people, some of them tortured by Russian Federation, are still there. This is the reality. And that is why we understand that the situation is difficult, but we have what we have. We will return all of our territories when we will have this opportunity. Thank you.
No amount of irresponsible saber-rattling by Vladimir Putin will deter the G7, our NATO allies, and allies of democracy around the world in our resolve to stand with Ukraine and to stand against Putin's illegal and irresponsible invasion. The atrocities he's committing in Mariupol, we saw in Bucha, and elsewhere, only strengthen our determination to ensure that Vladimir Putin loses this war. He made some very profound miscalculations. First of all, he miscalculated deeply the courage, the resolve, the strength of the Ukrainian people and of the Ukrainian leader. And secondly, he vastly underestimated the determination and the ability of countries around the world to stand against his actions and stand in support of our Ukrainian friends. And we will continue to be there as long as it takes, with whatever it takes, to make sure that the world and all of Russia understands just how badly Vladimir Putin chose to do. On top of that, right now we are celebrating Victory in Europe Day, where decades before, soldiers from the Allied countries, from Ukraine, from Russia, stood together, sacrificed, and conquered fascism. What Vladimir Putin is doing today, these past weeks, brings shame on the memory of the millions of people, the millions of Russians who sacrificed in the name of freedom. That is Putin's legacy. Nous n'allons pas hésiter dans notre détermination de continuer d'être solidaires du peuple ukrainien, de repousser contre la Russie, quoi que Vladimir Poutine essaye dans ses menaces. Il a fait un profond mauvais calcul dans son sous-estimation du courage et de la force du peuple ukrainien et la détermination des pays alliés d'être là pour eux. Et en cette journée d'anniversaire de la victoire en Europe, Vladimir Poutine est en train de faire honte à la mémoire aux millions de Russes qui ont lutté, qui ont fait des sacrifices pour vaincre le fascisme, pour assurer la liberté pour l'Europe et pour le monde.
Останнє запитання, будь ласка, телеканал Рада.
The final question from the TV channel Rada, please. Mr. Prime Minister, We are always happy to see you in Kyiv, Ukraine. And, Mr. President, I would like to start with the question to the Prime Minister. Do you think Putin could be considered as a new Hitler? And do you know that you're not allowed to enter Russia anymore? So you won't be able to see Syzran, which is the city somewhere in Russia, and that you won't be able to visit the festival of onions and other vegetables. And a question to the President. You've mentioned diplomats and negotiations, and is there any achievements in terms of the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine that started all the way back in Turkey? Thank you.
All Canada and Canadians will not be deterred in our resolve to stand with Ukraine and stand against Russia. First of all, because Ukraine is a friend to Canada. The story of Canada is one of people coming to build a better life, and the hundreds of thousands of Canadians, of over 1 million Canadians of Ukrainian origin, helped build our country. And it is an incredible source of pride for Canada that Ukrainians are so proudly Canadian at the same time, and it is also a source of Canada that for over 100 years, the Ukrainian language and culture has been celebrated and protected and taught in the kinds of schools that young people across the country, like our proudly Ukrainian Canadian Deputy Prime Minister, attended when she was a young girl. The ties between Canada and Ukraine run deep, and if Vladimir Putin wants to keep handing out sanctions, he's going to have to sanction, about 38 million Canadians before we even begin to notice. And secondly, we will continue to do whatever is necessary to stand with Ukraine, not just because it's the right thing or because Ukrainians are our friends, but because it is also standing for the principles of democracy that keep Canadians safe, that keep people around the world safe. And in my conversations with global leaders, whether it's in Africa or Asia or South America or elsewhere, that principle of protecting territorial integrity and fundamental sovereignty that Vladimir Putin ignored and thumbed his nose at, that is what resonates, and that's why Canadians will continue to stand with our friends and stand because it is right. Les Canadiens vont toujours être solidaires de l'Ukraine, pas seulement parce qu'on est amis avec l'Ukraine, mais bien sûr on l'est, mais aussi parce que les principes qu'on est en train de défendre, que les Ukrainiens sont en train de défendre avec leur vie contre l'invasion illégale de Vladimir Poutine, sont des principes qui nous gardent tous en sécurité à travers le monde et qui doivent être défendus à chaque étape.
Дякую за ваше запитання.
Thank you for this question. 500,000 people, that's the approximate numbers. Now, these people were forcibly deported into the Russian Federation or in some areas of Donbass. We don't know their fate. Tens of thousands of people were taken from the city of Mariupol and from the other southern and eastern cities. Not only those who were in Azovstal, but some of those who were in the city of Mariupol and other cities. Those tens of thousands of people, they have not lost their life, and we have not lost our citizens. And this situation when people were deported, were taken by buses, were cars, that would happen. As for the evacuation, we've used the evacuation by buses and cars from the Azovstal. So this is the negotiations that we had. No more negotiations at this point. Thank you.